to introduce Sharon, who I've recently just met, and she has an extraordinary story. You know, sometimes doctors don't diagnose things properly, or they don't tell you things. So she went through something that was pretty crazy, and thank goodness she found the patches. So Sharon, welcome on. Tell us, you know, give us the background, what happened and how you got introduced to the patches, and then what's happened for you. And I know you have a short little bleep about your husband as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. I have a long history of low back pain, and it basically started when I was about 14. And over the years, many times as it got worse and worse, and then I've had 5 children, so it progressively got worse with each pregnancy, and you know how that goes. So at a certain point, I complained to the doctor many times, chiropractor, things like that. But my medical doctor, they would always send me for x-rays. And then the x-rays always said the same thing, just mild arthritic changes. So they would give me a prescription for ibuprofen, super strength, or naproxen, or something like that. Well, this went on for many years, and I just accepted the fact that I was going to have to live with it. And because I never got to the bottom of it. About 2.5 years ago, I started having a lot of issues with balance and gait, mobility, stiffness, muscle spasms, things like that. And then I started to develop tremors. So I went in at my doctor's recommendation, and I went to see a neurologist, and they told me that they suspected I was suffering with Parkinson's. So he started me on medication for it about 1.5 years ago. Anyway, make a long story short, I changed insurance companies, my medical insurance, because I changed jobs. So I had to change doctors. And, you know, the whole time, the low back pain has been constant. And it doesn't matter how many times I take the pills, it's just constant. Okay. So
what level of pain had it gotten to now?
Oh my goodness. There were days when I literally could not move. And they would be certain days, like 3 or 4 times a year, where the pain would be literally off the chart, like 9, 10, 11 even. I just couldn't move. And it would take me at least a week to get my mobility back, just gradually with rest and medication. And, you know, like ibuprofen, that's it. Massage helped a little bit. Anyway, so I changed doctors last year, as I mentioned. So this was last year, and I had to have a physical. You know how you go in to see a new doctor and they have to establish you as a new patient. So they did blood work, never said anything to me about it, just to put me in the system or whatever. And so I just was more focused on the Parkinson's diagnosis, because that was the most pressing thing for me at the moment. So then about 3 months ago, Susie was sitting, my neighbor Susie was sitting on her front porch, and my kitten had wandered off and I couldn't find him. So my husband was helping me look. He is disabled pretty badly. He spends most of his time in a wheelchair, but he managed to walk out there with his staff and was, trying to help me find the kitten. After about 15 minutes, he was done, and he sat down on the porch with Susie, and they started talking about the patch. So she knew that he's been confined to a wheelchair most of the time because he has a bone growth disease. It's a very aggressive form of arthritis that is autoimmune. And so his spine is fusing. He has spurs through his whole body, things like that. So she started talking to him about the patch. X39. And he was interested. So she gave him some samples and he brought them home.
Now, before you go on, I want you just to give us a snapshot, because you shared with me what was happening on a daily basis, what your life was about when you got up and what your work, what happened at work, and then eventually.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, I was working at a grocery store as a customer service manager, and it required me to do lots of physical things, cashiering, things like that. I noticed that as I was walking through the store, my walking was so unsteady that I would wander from one side of the aisle to the other if I wasn't pushing a cart, if I didn't have something to hold me up and keep me steady. When I was cashiering, there were days that I literally could not bend and get things out of the cart. I had to have help. I got to the point where I had to stop working at the grocery store altogether and take a desk job because I just couldn't do the physical work anymore. And I do take care of my husband. I work at home and I have to help him with his showering, with his dressing, with his shoes, soaking his feet. I mean, all the things that, because he can't reach his own feet. He's fused to the point where he can't reach his own feet.
And so your condition was getting worse and you couldn't even take care of him like you used to.
No. And so, literally there were days when I couldn't even hardly get out of bed because the pain was excruciating.
Okay, let's jump to using the patches now.
Okay, so he talked me into using the patches instead of him. He's like, okay, I want you to try these because I think you're in worse shape than me, believe it or not. So I used them for 5 days. I was very, very skeptical. I did not think it was going to do anything. So I put it on at his behest, and literally 5, maybe 10 minutes after I put it on, I could feel something happening in my brain. It was so strange. It was almost like a tingling, lightheaded kind of busyness. And my mind immediately went to, it found the Parkinson's. So I was like, oh my God, what's happening in my head? But it wasn't unpleasant. It was just like, it was almost like it discovered it and it was looking around. So it was kind of weird, but I just kind of wrote it off because they said that there might be, something when I first put it on. So, so after 5 days, I noticed that with each passing day, my flexibility got a little better. And I was able to turn my head a little better. I was able to bend and actually tie my shoes without having spasms shoot up my back. Yeah, it was great. So then
what about you mentioned about being more clear-headed and your depression was changing.
Yes. After those first 5 days, I went back to get more samples, and then we ordered a order of them. And by the time about a couple of weeks gone by, I was thinking much more clearly. The brain fog was gone. I was my energy level was incredible. I haven't had that much energy in literally years. And so
now I know you talked about tying your shoes, washing your feet, in the shower, these kind of things that we all take for granted that all of a sudden, you were able to.
All of a sudden I was able to do that again. So at the end of March, I got a reminder that it was time for my annual checkup again. So I went and had my blood work done because I had my blood drawn first, two or 3 days beforehand, so they could have the results ready for me when I went in. Well, I went in and the doctor went through the whole, going over everything. And toward the end of the visit, she said, okay, I want to go over your blood test results with you. And I was like, okay. So she was going down through just doing the regular stuff. And all of a sudden she stopped and she went, wow. And I was like, what? And she's like, well, apparently last year when they drew your blood, looking at the numbers here, you were in stage 3 of kidney failure last year.
And the doctor never said anything to you?
Nope, never said a word.
And so quickly give us those numbers, because we're going to have to.
Yeah, sure. My creatinine was 1.08, and that's high. And the filtration rate for my kidneys was only 55%. And those numbers were terrible. But she said, whatever you're doing, you need to keep doing it, because the good news is your numbers this year from your blood test 2 or 3 days ago, my creatinine was 0.63, which normal is 0.621. So it went way down.
So you came out of kidney failure using.
Yes, I'm not in kidney failure anymore. And the filtration rate went up to 102%. So my kidneys are working a little better than 100%. And so she was just floored. She was like, I have no idea how you did it, but whatever you're doing, don't stop doing it. So that kind of floored me, because that explains a lot of the low back pain as to why I was suffering that, because that comes along with the kidney failure.
And I'm just going to kind of summarize this real quickly. So you were suffering and diagnosed with Parkinson's,
Right.
but had no idea that you had kidney failure.
No.
The symptoms are very similar. So you had like a double thing going on, dealing with Parkinson's, but really was in stage 3 kidney failure.
Yes.
And then you had shared that you could barely get off the couch,
Yeah, I could barely do
tired
it.
and all that. And so now, there's more to your story, but we're really running out of time. So we'll have to come back and get an update. And
I want to see what happens next.
I know. This is like super exciting, because this has only been since February, folks.
Right. Yeah. It's only, that's it.
This is just a couple months of a complete turnaround. So thank you so much, Sharon, for